All right, starting us off here. That clap was for the edit thing. Edit. Anyways, Wood Air Metal number synced? 28. I don't know. It could not be. You never know. Try syncing that up.
Could it be like the the sound thing or it'd be like a Bruce Lee movie or something?
Oh yeah. We can sit.
Cannot do this to me.
That would be amazing. I mean, I do like my office as cold as possible, so I can hang meat in here and hit it with a stick to do the sound effects.
Oh yeah, we should get into that. That'd be pretty fun. I'm always so jealous when they're like, "This is how we really made this sound. It was these 2 pieces of bacon,
yeah,
on top of a basketball, yeah, and if you light it on fire, yeah."
That's what the sound of someone's head exploding is. Bacon on a basketball. On fire. Because fire is good. Like episode 28.
That's the sound we use for kisses. That's great. You're like, oh, that's how they do that.
Oh, great. That would be how they do that. So we're back. Episode 28. Adam Keeler over here. Tim Mirth over there. No interview this week. We are back to ranting and raving about the goings-on in the music world and our own world and things like that. And we have a super important announcement because tomorrow Tim Mirth's other project,
today, which he has like when you 70, see it.
Well, today, yeah, hopefully. I mean, if you get it done in time, don't slack.
Oh, it's ready. It's already on Bandcamp, ready to drop.
I'm not talking about your album. I'm talking about the podcast. I know the album's set.
No, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. All right.
It'll be out today. Today you can go find it.
Today, boom. Today you can find it. Night Terrors Here Again, but spelled like
here
the ear
again?
Here, not like. Did I get it wrong?
Here again? No, it's a question.
Here, okay. Oh, again, it was a question. You got me confused now. It's like, great, I screwed up I didn't have the last name last week, and now I'm all screwing up your album. Anything else that I can dive bomb on as a podcast host, that would be superb. A lot, I know.
You have to do something right to dive on it, right?
There it was, folks. Shots fired. Shots fired. Oh, man. So you got the album dropping tomorrow. Here again.
Yeah.
Again. Here again.
Exactly.
And you had a gig yesterday at was that the Bop Stop again?
Yeah, it was Night Terrors, same group.
Yep, Night Terrors.
So officially it was supposed to be a CD release party. The CDs are ordered, all the artwork's in, all the blah blah blah. We don't have the CDs yet. So unfortunately,
I thought you ordered them in time. Like, didn't you do the?
No, like, we cut it kind of close anyway. It was just one of those things, it just is what it is.
Yeah, nothing you can do about it. I remember when I was touring once, I ran out of CDs and I did a rush order on another batch, and I had to find the FedEx person in the middle of nowhere, in Eastern PA. We're driving through the hills, I'm calling FedEx and being like, "Where is it at?" Because they said that I planned it out on picking them up after a show when I was in PA. I had them delivered to where I was staying, but
PA
they went
is
to
Pennsylvania for people from north. I don't know whatever area this is of the country.
Yeah, northeasterly, middle-ish.
Middle, northeast, yeah.
Yeah, something like it. Anyways, Pennsylvania. So I was in the middle of somewhere, Pennsylvania, and I sent it to the place where I was staying, and figuring, okay, I'm going to be there the next morning. We'll wait for FedEx to show up, because the next gig was only a couple hours away. We can make it in time if we waited to the afternoon for FedEx. And they missed the location or put it somewhere else, and it was on the truck, and they were going to, I'm calling them, and I ended up getting to the guy when he was on his break at a diner, in the middle of nowhere. I was like, "Do you have a packet?" And he's like, "Yep, I expected you. Here you go." So that was all. That was a fun little adventure. But I did get him. I didn't sell that much money more, but either way, I had him. That's
I
the way that goes.
cannot recall exactly, but I think it was on the way to the airport to go to Europe that we picked up the Red Side Visible CDs.
Oh yeah, I gave you guys the ride to the airport. Yep.
Yeah,
It was someplace.
You were there, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was driving you guys. So I was the roadie.
That's right. Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, why are we all together? Because I remember we were all together.
Yep.
So yeah, so my band Red Side Visible, the one that put an album out in May, the original version. This was 2010, I guess. Was it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In May-ish time, we had a festival we were playing in France, and it was actually when you could still get like CDs made locally. It wasn't just like there was like 5 places in the country that actually did it. But where every city had its own places or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we went and picked them up from the place that made them.
Yeah, on the way to the airport.
On the way to the airport.
I think I had you, Poperad, and Chris.
Yeah, it would have been Chris, right? It wasn't Paul, was it?
Yeah. So, yeah. That's crazy times.
Oh,
that's good God.
That's cutting it.
That was 10 years ago. Yeah, it's like, that explains these random aches and pains I'm having now. I don't remember if we
sold any in Europe, really. Maybe a few.
You said your reception was really good. Like all the small places that you played were really, like everybody was open to the music and stuff like that.
Well, so Red Side Visible only did the festival stuff, but we did other gigs, this sort of like fusion jazz, whatever stuff. And that was really nice. There was a place, man, I can't believe I forget the name of it. But it was like a sister city of like Paul's high school thing. And was that Lawnsburg? It might have been Lawnsburg. Anyway, they like wrote a whole like paper article, and like the whole town like came out to come see us, and it was cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was real cool. They also had,
very nice.
Incidentally, in that town, which I think was Lawnsburg, there's this gelato place that was like unreal. Like,
one would hope,
I've had a lot of gelato. I travel to Europe a fair amount, and I really like gelato. Yeah. It's great, but they're not all created equally.
No, not at all.
So not this place in particular, memory's funny, but I just remember being like, seriously? Like, this is really good. Like, it was a step above normal. So
awesome. Very, very cool.
Gelato, Europe. Stuff. That's my weakness when I go to Europe. It's always like gelato and coffee, like lots of coffee and gelato.
Mm. We just had a gelato place open around the corner from us in downtown Wadsworth. It's called Dolce, really? And it's really good. It's actually pretty darn good. My favorite is the salted caramel gelato. That's right. I always get upset when I go in and they're out of it. I'm like, really? You guys should just keep it like on intravenous drip, so I can go and get it when I want it. But
that's
it's
right
really
up my
good.
alley. The salted caramel for sure.
Oh yeah,
that would be a choice.
I mean, it's all like it's an Italian dessert place. They have alcoholic beverages and milkshakes and all that wonderful stuff. So
anyway, we were
a lot of expression.
the next Night Terrors album would be called "The Salted Caramel Gelato Is Gone."
Release the track. You gotta have me overdubbing some of the no's on that. What?
No.
What? What am I doing here?
Yeah, so Night Terrors is a cool project in that it's the project I can do anything I want in. Half of it's like very through composed, crazy, like some of these charts are 20 pages long. They're just like, lots of music, lots of weird time signatures and stuff. But then there's another aspect that's completely free improv, and there's gongs and singing bowls, and I play viola on it sometimes. And like, actually last night we debuted the allophone, which is this aluminum percussion instrument that Paul got. That's I don't know, it's probably like 8 feet wide, maybe wider. And it's kind of like a xylophone kind of thing, but it's these metal cone looking aluminum things, these bells that you hit with a stick.
Hmm.
And
is it pitch specific?
And it's all pitched, yeah. So Paul actually wrote some new songs for that. One was called 21, which changes time signature every measure up to 21. So it starts at 1, next measure's in 2, next measure's in 3, goes to 21, and then it goes back down to 1.
What's the pulse with that? Like how quick?
It's relatively quick. I think it's somewhere around there. You know?
Okay.
Yes, it's a pretty neat piece. And there was another piece too that we did. Actually, the other piece was really cool piece that he wrote as well, which was there's a sort of like an A section and a B section. There's some cues, and then there's all these little motifs that you can play, and some of them are 2 measures or 1 measure or 4 measures. And you just choose. You can choose whatever one you want at any time. So there's, I don't know, 13 to choose or something in each section. And I could choose one, and I could do the repeated, or I could go to another one, or I could take a break. And so it ends up getting this like layered sound, and it's improv, but it's like written out too. So there's choices to be made.
Sounds like a Steve Reich idea. Like,
yeah, probably would. Or like I've seen like Zorn and those guys.
Yep. And they just conduct when it's okay. Everybody switch to this section here.
Yeah, and pick which one thing you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's always organic and new. So that was fun. But yeah,
now is that all recorded?
Last night?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so we play at the Bop Stop. The Bop Stop video records it. I was gonna say videotape, but I think that's
really dating ourselves on that.
Video recorder, and they actually have 2 cameras, and one can like zoom in, and it's really nicely done. There was mics on everything. Came out well. You could watch the whole thing streamed on Facebook. But I did get a video of it too, so I'll probably do some stuff with it. And the gig went pretty well. A few things happened at the gig that had never happened to me before.
Ooh, do tell.
Which is kind of fun. So one thing, and I don't have the guitar down here. So I played the Brian Moore and the K-Line Telly.
Okay.
Were the 2 guitars, which was great because normally Night Terrors I'll play a 7-string, which I have 2 7-strings, but honestly I don't know. In the last 10 years, I much prefer playing a 6-string to any other combination of strings, for a variety of reasons. But also, those are the 2 nicest guitars that I have, and for a lot of reasons. But anyway, so I used a Brian Moore, and like I said, so there's all these written parts. Then there's parts that are improv, and the improv goes from like really sweet, like beautiful chordal, like, like fading into these beautiful, like lustrous, whatever. It can kind of go anywhere to like crazy mayhem, like no holds barred, super dissonant or crazy fast or anyway. So I was doing this thing, and I always challenge myself to try something I've never tried before. But this is not what I mean by this particular one. I actually had so I was pushing on the bar on the Brian Moore all the way down, and then I was like using my fingers on the string, so it was like, and I had this crazy effect going on, and I was kind of holding this was going on, and Paul was doing something cool with the gongs or whatever during that part, and when I say gongs, Paul has like 30 gongs, and they're of all different sizes,
yep,
and like, it could be like doom, then ding, dong, ding, 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 all these kind of neat things. So I was holding that down, and then I didn't realize that guitar always comes back to tune really well. But when I came back up, it was the pitch was way low, and it was way out of tune, which was unfortunate because the next section that we were doing was this part with these chords that had to sound a certain way. We got through it, and then we stopped to end that sort of movement, and we talked to the crowd a little bit, and I had a tune. But what I realized is one of the springs popped out on the bar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So then I was starting to tune it.
Quick, make sure everybody knows what exactly that means, because in case you don't know how a tremolo is set up. Hey, hang on, let me grab mine. I got mine right here. Oh, you got it? Okay. So to those of you that are listening, it's a block underneath in the back of the guitar that has springs on it that go to another thing that's screwed in. Basically, the springs counter the tension on the guitar strings counter the tension on the springs, and that causes the bridge to float at an equilibrium. If any of those springs go, you lose that equilibrium because that's the way that it's set up. So I'll let you take it from here, Tim.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know if you can hear me, but this is a guitar.
Yeah, that's better.
There's springs here. This is a tremolo no, so you can ignore that for a second. But these black things are springs, and basically, this thing can come up. I can't really do it with my finger, and I don't have the bar on here. But what happened is one of those springs actually popped out, which meant there was less tension pulling this down, and the bridge actually lifted up like this way. And unfortunately, on floating bridges, when you're tuning, if you say you tune one string, it pulls the tension up on the floating bridge, and that makes these strings loose. So if you tuned all the strings in a row and you didn't go back and check the first one, it actually would have got flat because the other ones are pulling up the bridge more. So I'm sitting there trying to tune it, and it's taking forever, trying to tune the guitar. And I could have switched to K-line, but there was a song I wanted to use the thing on. So I actually used it with it had 2 springs, it had 3 springs originally. One of the springs popped out, so there was still 2.
So what did that do to the action? That had to kill everything.
Nah, it wasn't bad.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine
I'm not as picky about action as some people are. Mostly I don't care. I think it's because I don't know. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, I didn't notice the action being bad. That guitar's awesome. The Brian Moore's. I think I was telling you earlier. I like that's a Carvin. I was just showing you. They play wonderfully, but to me, there's a big difference in quality, especially in the sound production and just how the guitar reacts. The Brian Moore compared to the Carvins, for my taste at least. But even just dynamically and all kinds of things, it's just better. I mean, I think there's pretty much no comparison between the quality. But
it's a big gauntlet
that could just be me. What's that?
So that's a big gauntlet to throw down. You're gonna
I
get all
don't mean, and I think that the
I know what you mean.
Actually, that particular Carvin, I love the neck profile. It's real wide, and it's just really easy to play. But I think it's part of it's the both Carvins I have are neck throughs, and they just sound kind of dead, and I don't know. There's so many things, but one of the things I really like about guitars, the things I want to have them do, is I want them to be more dynamic and more expressive. But a lot of electric guitars, electric guitar in general is very not dynamic. And then some of them are even more not dynamic just by the way they're built, and then the electronics and stuff that they have. So that's the part I'm talking about. The Brian Moore, can get you have a lot of control over the dynamics and just the way I don't know. You can really dig in and it reacts a certain way. You can really back off and it reacts a certain way. That's likable. Anyway, so I did tune it and it came out okay. Another thing that I did, and it was purely an accident in another improv section, but this was a good one. So I had a whammy pedal, which I think is yours. And I had that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was doing this thing where I was pushing it down, and it was doing this wee-oh. But the one pedal there on the bottom, if you push it, it changes to 1 octave, 2 octaves, this, that, the harmonies, all these kind of things. So when I was using it, it was every time I pressed down, I had this pulse going. Wee-oh, kind of thing. But every time I pushed down, I would switch to the different patch. So my heel would hit the other button.
Uh-oh.
And it had this really cool sound. And it would go to harmonies, but then the harmonies would change. And it would go back to the octaves. So I was pretty. I was like,
kind of cool.
how did I never think of that before? Like,
That's a brilliant idea. I mean, that's
it was brilliant. It sounded awesome, and I had this really cool like delay and kind of like thick reverb on it. It just sounded like this big, crazy sound going on. So those are my
pretty
two
cool.
night chairs. So you have to watch the video. One, you can watch me tune for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's floating bridges. I mean, that's one thing that turns me off from buying some guitars that I see up on Reverb. It's like, God, I don't want another Floyd. I just don't. I don't want to do it.
You can't. I mean, I don't even know what you do with a Floyd in that situation. I guess you just give up.
Yeah,
I can't imagine. There's got to be people that have, like generally had pretty good luck or whatever, and they just brought their one guitar with a Floyd in it. And it's like the middle of a gig, and they lose it, like a string breaks or something, and then just like,
oh yeah, you're toast. That's it. You're finished.
I know we have 4 more hours in this gig, but
that was a thing that always had me kind of awestruck in a way when I got to see Steve Vai or Satriani, and the guy just like beat the hell out of the whammy bar. The guitar was generally pretty good in tune for like 3 songs. Then it'd switch off. But either way, I'd never experienced a Floyd Rose where it stayed together that way, taking that much punishment after one song. It'd be like, nope, I got to
really interesting.
So maybe it's the way
that even with the Wilkinson style bridges, I can be pretty mean with them, and they mostly go back to tune. I don't notice most. That was what was weird with that Brian Moore. I was like, it came back and it didn't come back in tune. Like that was actually surprising to me. Occasionally, like one of the strings might get a little bit off, and I'll just adjust it. But that can happen if you bend the string too far.
Yeah, exactly. Is that a float or not? Obviously, it's a floating thing. Does it have a locking nut or locking tune? Okay.
Yeah, so I don't like the locking nut thing either. It's cool on Floyd's. Like Floyd's, when you push down, like the strings really flop, right?
Oh yeah,
and you can pull up even higher, and just because of the way they're designed.
Yeah, but with the cutout.
Like you can only go down so far. Like you don't really gain much. Like the strings do get floppier, but they don't sound much different at a certain floppy level. Yeah. So like I can easily get the Wilkinson to get to the floppy level. So you don't gain anything on the Floyd that way, even though they do get floppier. And you can pull it up farther, but I mean you can still pull it up a lot on the Wilkinson. So I don't know. Anyway, I like them. They're plenty fine. My problem is I tend to take these days I take the bar off a lot of times, even though I had it on this time, because it's a little too easy for me to get in like Jeff Beck, Scott Henderson territory. Like I don't really like figured a lot of that stuff out, but I listened to enough that it sort of just happens, and tend to like when I hear myself sounding too much like somebody, I like to turn it off for the most part.
I will put one little asterisk on my rant about the tuning stability with Floyd Roses or floating bridges. Is when I did when I had the Paul Reed Smith, that actually held it really, really well, really well. That did have locking tuners and a graphite neck or graphite nut on it, so the strings would move very, very easily. But I was pretty impressed with that. So another reason why I still cook myself for getting rid of that guitar. The pining. I should just write a song. I miss my Paul Reed Smith. I don't know why I don't play electric that much anymore, but I still miss that guitar.
It had a locking nut, huh?
No, locking tuners.
Oh, okay. Yeah, locking tuners. Those are awesome. Huge fan of locking tuners.
Yeah, I think they're great, especially on a steel string instrument. It's like it's perfect. You could never do that on nylon.
You can change your strings in like 3.5 minutes.
It's like flip, 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 clip, 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 done.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
It's so cool. I do like that idea of those things, and I like it. The ones, it took me forever to figure out the ones that were on that Paul Reed Smith, because it was like this weird tension thing where you had to like push it one way and turn the tuner another to get it to clamp down on the string. And at first I was just like, how the hell do you do this? And it took me a good couple of weeks to finally get it down. And now they're like they're different where they lock up from the bottom and they pinch it, from underneath. And there's so many cool little options with the tuning, things like that. And then you get even further extremes, like with my headless, where it's just they're spinning things that you use your pick to tune it. it's all like locked in place at the end with no nut at all. It's just a 0 fret. So
Yeah.
I love that type of thing. If it makes a guitar better and it works, sweet. I'm all in. It's great. So that's awesome. So the gig, other than those couple of events, that was everything else went relatively
Yeah,
well.
it went pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I haven't played too many gigs, and I mostly haven't been seeking them out. Though I do have a gig in a few weeks with my trio, at the Bob Stop also, but playing more like jazz fusion stuff. So that's gonna be fun.
Cool.
I think that's September 9th, I want to say. So that'll be live streaming as well as, in person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the album comes out tomorrow or today. Gosh, tomorrow for us, today for you. It's a double album actually, which is my first double album, and for that matter, it probably could have been a triple album if not more. We deleted a lot of stuff.
Seeing all that stuff, and I'm like, that's going to be a lot of fun to kind of go through and pick. That's kind of the fun. It's almost like improvising the album itself out of an improvisatory album. That's the words I'm looking at. Man, my mouth is just not working. So it's one of those things. Getting old. But
so that's coming out, and it's cool. We have another guitar player on there, Chris Bober, who we'll have to get him on the show sometime. We could talk about guitar, but he's also got a pretty cool background in his day job that's like with psychology stuff. So, particularly like performance anxiety and stuff like that. But anyway, he plays on it, probably like half the tracks. Yeah, and it came out really good. I think I kind of went with a little bit more raw mix intentionally, just to make it a little bit hairier. Than the Red Side Visible, which in a lot of ways you probably say that's already hairy, but this was a little bit hotter, kind of like mix in some ways, just to sound like more raw, and but extremely dynamic. Like it's all over the place, like in terms of dynamics and stuff. And there's gongs and singing bowls and all kinds of stuff. And like I said, I play viola on it. I also did the artwork for it. Because I'm crazy.
But that artwork turned out great. Like I like the look of it. It's almost
I think it's pretty cool.
Like an eyeball close up with the veins and stuff like that. And it's just, I like it. It sits well considering and not just the album title, but like the name of the band, Night Terrors.
Yeah. So it was the idea for the artwork was the first Night Terrors album was like this tree thing that I'm forgetting his last name, but his name is Richard something. He made this artwork. It's really cool. But it's these like trees, like at the edge of a forest, but you can kind of see like a face coming out through the trees. It just looks cool. It's a really neat like illustration kind of drawing thing. And then the Paul Stranahan Insomnia record is this white album that I did, where I actually took Paul's eye. I did the artwork for it, but I started with Paul's eye, and then basically like it changed it up in a bunch of ways. It made it more circular, and it's like this sort of like white and brownish kind of eyeball. Are you familiar with that cover?
The first or the second album?
The white one with the eyeball. It looks like an eyeball.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I thought a little bit about that when I was making this. It's like, it's sort of some weird combination of those two looks. So
it works well. That's one of the hardest things. Like, let's go down this bunny trail for a second. I remember when I finished the one album that released, getting the artwork for it took me forever. Like, I just was never happy with whatever I got. Like, I had friends of mine that were artists, and like my stepsister is a graphic design person or artist, and she does fantastic work. Has done huge ad campaigns, and she did a mock-up, and I was like, no, that's just not my thing, and just went through all it literally took like another 6 to 8 months for me to be happy with the artwork, and the album was done. It just needed to be that was my garbage can.
That's great sound.
And I should have We got it recorded. We could sample it and come up with a tune.
That's right.
But so it just took forever for me to kind of like find something where I was like, yeah, that fits it. And it ended up like the artwork itself for that album ended up being like a conglomeration of three people's work, like a photograph from a friend of mine, a drawing from another friend of mine, and this one other friend of mine kind of like put it all together on one thing. And I'm like, hey, that works. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. We're done. So like the nice thing is at least with your abilities in terms of doing it yourself, that's got to at least take a little bit of the, I don't like it. What about like this type of thing? What do you think? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think I've gotten a lot better at it. Initially, so before I played guitar, I was really big into drawing, like enough so that I think my parents were considering like getting me into a school that like really worked on like visual art. So even though I was like 10, they're like, he's showing an aptitude and like whatever. But then I started playing guitar and like just stopped, stopped like drawing altogether for the most part, except like in my notebooks and stuff.
Yeah.
And so for the longest time, I never really advanced much past where I was at like 10 years old, But at some point, I started learning more about it, and I read more books about it. Like when I'd have interest in exploring it. So now, like what I really learned was like drawing. I used to think was all about like skill, like how well can you draw a straight line or a circle, or But it really has, in my opinion, it really has very little to do with that. That's like 1% of becoming a good drawer. The really good thing about drawing is knowing how to see. I think we might have talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah, we did.
But what people do is like if you say, "Hey, draw a table," people say, "Oh, a table." They have a symbol in their head for a table, and it's like, "Oh, it's a square looking thing, and it's got these four legs." And people can draw the symbol for it pretty well. The problem is that's not what it really looks like. So what you have to learn how to do is draw what stuff actually looks like. It's not so hard to do in a way. You just trace the lines, in your head still. But like if you just like look at wherever you're at right now, and like I'm looking at this table, I'm saying, there's certain lines you got to draw and the certain things you have to see. It's not that symbol that you had in your head, but the actual thing that you're seeing and the shapes that you're seeing. So a big part of it is learning that. And then there's things about like I've gotten tips, like the guy who did the art work for the Red Side Visible stuff. He sent me this book on like shading and like the values and how the depth changes, and where you like even like these little instances where you put darker and lighter colors and what it does to the depth perception and all these like little things you learn about art. And one other side of it is at one point, I have an engineering degree, but I actually considered doing architecture, and I actually did a few semesters of architecture at Kent State. I think it was before I met you, maybe. But yeah, that was great because the first couple of classes there was all about design. It wasn't so much about like architecture itself, but just like what's good design. Like when you draw something, what makes it good or not. And one of the things is how the lines interact with each other. So like if you had a line here and a line here, well, like they connect here. Like something has to happen because they're interacting. Even though they're just two lines you drew like this, something has to happen here because they're affected. And maybe something happens here or on this side that's different than the other side because they have to react to each other. So there's all these little like principles you learn about good design, good shading, blah blah blah. I've said all this to say that the first time I did an album cover was actually the first Red Side Visible thing, and it was not by choice. Part of the reason that we were picking up the CDs the time we were was the guy that was supposed to do the artwork just disappeared. I don't think I ever talked to him again. Like he just could never get a hold of him again. Like he just disappeared. So like I had to come up with some artwork.
and gone. Just
Yeah,
like
I don't know
not,
what happened to him. I don't even remember his name now. I could probably find it. But yeah, it was just gone. And
wow.
that was a very I know I that was very I would say like an old school style of making album cover art because I used cameras. It was all cameras. Like I hand drew a lot of stuff and I did layers, but it wasn't like all digital. Like it was like taking pictures and then using filtering and all these like it was
Hmm.
almost like an old school style. Even all the like the wording and stuff I did by hand. Um, so it was kind of neat in a way. And even like I like laid out all these things, but I really just took a picture of these things that I would design and then I would crop them. But then the next album that I did was I guess it was that Paul Stranahan one with the eyeball. And that's when I
Mhm.
really started diving into like digital editing and stuff and what you could do and etc. So all this was a long-winded way of saying I have some like education and design, years of drawing, and I've draw better now than I ever did in a lot of ways. And if you ever go to my office at work, you just find people's things like this crazy like sketches that I just draw when I'm thinking, like it's part of like my process. I'm just sketching out things, but yeah. So when the problem I have with the digital thing is I'm just not like I've learned a lot about it, but it's kind of like learning how to do the mixing things too, right? Where you get a new plugin and you got to like learn how it works and what does it actually do. And a lot of that is just like winging it. Like you just try
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Like, oh, huh. And you kind of like put in the back of your head, like maybe I could use that sometime. I don't really know what I would use it for. And you try to remember that that thing exists one day when you need it. So it's a bit like that when you're doing the digital art. So this was a digital art piece, but I actually hand drew some like on my screen, like it's a touch screen. I could, like hand draw a little bit of
Oh,
things, and
nice.
then I like manipulated those things with some of the other things, and like you could do all these. It's kind of like music, like you have these like different instead of being a bunch of tracks going across, you actually have like layers of pictures on top of each other. So if you actually look at the main picture that's the cover, I mean it's like 20 layers of things
Hmm.
to get to that picture. And I actually found this really cool picture of a tree as part of it, like this really like gnarly tree with all kinds of branches coming out. And I interlaced that with all these other things, and you know you cut them in a certain way. And some of it though, it's like you kind of get close. And the problem I have with that is I don't know how to do a lot of stuff. I'm always just like, what's this filter thing do? You know, or like it's not really like filters. Like when you're using the filters is like what you use right on like Instagram. I don't mean that. I mean like there's these like algorithms that do certain things. Like
Yeah. It's going to affect the picture in a
yeah, and even
certain
like
way. Yeah.
blur it certain ways. There's like hundreds of different kind of blurs. There's all
Noise you
hundreds
want
of
to
different
add, all
types
that
of
type of stuff. Yeah.
spirals, and there's like artist textures and things like that you can use. So a lot of it is like I don't totally know what all of them do, but if I see something that I like, then I'm like, okay, I'll take a sort of like copy of that, and then I'll build from there and constantly build from it. And then I'll have like at some point I had like 10 different versions of this thing that I could go back to at any point that were each of them were fairly solid, and I just kept building on it and kind of followed those paths to get to it.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's all those kind of like
I got
things
it.
you learn, but yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it. It was one of those things when I was doing mine that I tried the digital thing and I'm like, I don't have the patience for this. Like, I don't want to have
It's a
to.
lot of work.
Yep. I would rather be playing guitar, but at the same time, I was still super picky as that artistic way to be like, yeah, no, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it
Yeah.
either. It's not going to cut it. And like it's, yeah, like even now trying to name stuff, in terms of like an album and come up with a photo for it, it's still kind of like, no, I'll like it for a day, and then I'll just no, I don't like it. Nope, I don't like it. It's
Now, if I had my druthers, I
Your
would
what?
draw an art. I would draw one. The problem that people don't realize with really like good drawings is they take forever. Like you're gonna put 80 hours into it, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and
Yep.
that's just the time commitment. I didn't have that time commitment or that time availability for this record. Trying to get the album out in the time that we had.
It's a weird thing with deadlines, though. Sometimes that'll just help you just get it done. You know.
Yeah,
It's,
I didn't want to do that with a drawing because one of the things what I really needed was brainstorming time. You know, I would have tried to put together 10 to 20 different designs as a draft. You know, kind of as quick as I could. That's still gonna take me 10 hours. You know.
Yeah. Yep.
Just to get those, and then to be like, okay, I think what I really want to do is these two kind of mix together in some certain way, and then take those ideas and then try to build the real big one, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
And it just takes time, and I don't know. Didn't have the time.
Well, I don't. Sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. Exactly.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
It's like those things where you can see them when I was on Instagram, where you can see like somebody's like, yeah, you know, this is a drawing done in 10 seconds, 10 minutes, and 1 hour type of thing. And it's like, oh, kids, I think that's the one of the underlying things that most people that aren't creative in a serious artistic way don't understand is the amount of time it takes to get a certain result.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like, you know, like a buddy of mine does a lot of website and design stuff, and he's like, I'll get rush orders, and you know, there's a lot of money to be made in a rush order, but sometimes I'll turn them down because it's like I'm not going to be that turnaround's too quick. It's not going to be that good. He's like, I could do it, but I have a standard, you know, and he's big enough where he can take a hit of telling somebody no, you know, and that goes across the board with all forms of art. Like you can be like, I need it tomorrow, and it's like, well, good luck. You know, it's could I do it?
Yeah, yes. Totally that, you know, fast, cheap, good, or whatever. Kind of thing.
Exactly. You can even have it cheap and fast, but it won't be good. You know, good and fast, but it won't be cheap. And then, or cheap and good, but it won't be fast type of thing. So or whatever that thing goes. And that completely applies because, you know, one of the things that I think, and I don't mean to do like a separation of people with this, but when you work in an artistic way, the emphasis is not only to please the client, but you got to be happy with it yourself.
Sure.
You know, it's like I have to put out something that they're going to be happy with, but I got to make sure that I'm happy with it as well. Even if I might not necessarily like the project or the piece, you know, the aesthetic liking doesn't matter when money gets put on the table. Like, unless it's radically different from what I'm in. You know, if somebody wanted me to mix a hip hop tune, I'd be like, I'm probably not your guy. I don't listen to enough of it. I don't know enough of it for it to be worth the money.
Give me some time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Give me some time and I can dive into it. And by time, I mean like 6 months of nonstop listening and engagement to get it to that. But the counterpoint is that, you know, when like take the last wedding that I did, like the piece that she picked was like this was totally out of left field for me. I was not expecting anybody that wasn't a classical musician to be like, oh yeah, this Leo Brouwer prelude would be great. And I was like, oh boy.
If you don't know Leo Brouwer, tonight listen to Leo Brouwer music.
Yeah, go to El Decamera Negro. That's what I played, but definitely check out that one of his many standout pieces. So
wonderful,
absolutely incredible composer. Anyways, so she like the bride sent me this list, and she wanted the prelude to that and suite number 2, and I'm like, okay, this is not easy. How long is your walk? You know, like how much of this do I have to learn? And I'm like, let me look at it for like a week to see if I can even do this, you know, do it well. Like, could I have pulled it off? Yes. Could I have pulled it off well is the question that I was looking at. You know, it's somebody's wedding. I don't want to screw it up. So, you know, after about a week of really tweaking it, I'm like, all right, I think at this spot it's good because then I can repeat this thing and it actually sound like it'll end when she gets to the front rather than me just stopping, you know, and playing like a chord that's relatively a resolution of where it's at. and they were fine with it, and it went really well. Like it was actually like perfect timing. She got up at the front, and I hit that spot where it sounded like it would end. Played a D chord. Everybody was happy and finished. But that's like the thing. And I already had a list of alternatives. I was like, just in case it doesn't work, this is what we can go with.
Yeah,
because
right.
I don't. My name's on it. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, that was lousy. Hire this guy. He's lousy, or whatever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Plus, I want to be able to play it. And I'm kind of a perfectionist in that to a fault. I got to really calm down a little bit and actually release stuff rather than being.
I think it's really useful information, honestly. Like, both of my kids are actually pretty good drawers for their ages, and they work on it too. Like, they just for fun. Like, they'll find YouTube videos and learn how to draw something, and like, and they get an advantage, right? It's kind of like if I was teaching them music, they get an advantage of my experience, and I can show them some things like, hey, just try doing this, or here you could shadow it this way, or you could do this or that. But what I think is a big advantage for them, because I think there's a misconception, like you said, like with art, that it's quick. Like, oh, they just drew that picture of Al Pacino or whatever, and it's perfect, and it. Like that probably only took 20 minutes, but when I draw something that looks like crap in 20 minutes, I was like, well, yeah, but it actually took them 25 hours to draw that, and like that, his nose took a week, or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't realize how much time and effort and just to actually pull those things off. And I think once you know it, though, it's like, okay, well, that seems more reasonable in a way. Like, if all I had to do was focus on a nose for a day and try to make it as close to perfect as I could, maybe I could pull that off. Like, instead of being like, I got to draw this entire scene with 75 people and, like that's an impossible task to try to do in a day. Like, no one's doing that.
Yep. I remember watching a thing on photorealistic portraits.
Yeah.
And it was just like remarkable. It's like, this guy took like 6 months to do a photorealistic thing from a photo. Right. And it's like, you could barely tell the painting away from the photo, but that's kind of the point with that style. And I was like, that's just, the level of detail attentiveness is incredible. But like you were just saying, it's a matter of, we don't get that guy looked at that inch by inch square for a week solid to get every single detail right. Rather than looking at the big thing, it's like as I'm
it's
tackling.
Not like, oh yeah, let me look at your face. Okay, I'm done. It's not like that at all.
With working on music, like I'm working up a fugue right now, and it's like, what did I do today? I spent a good hour and a half on 8 bars.
Sure.
Just working that up. It's like, and I'm drilling it, and I'm drilling and coming up with different ideas, finding out what's going on through the phrase and so on, and just working it up. And then I take that, and then that's still going to be a good amount of work. And then I move back and do something else and keep that up. And then you take all these fractions of the whole and string them all end to end when you think that you're competent enough. And then you play through it and weep bitterly and go back to the drawing board and keep doing it. That's just the way that it goes. And I think any level of remotely good art requires that amount of detail, attention to detail. Whether it's sculpture or painting or writing or music, all those particular things are going to take an immense amount of detail work, which is funny because I remember my doctor saying, like, he's like, you probably do have ADD. He's like, you just don't know it because you're so like in that artistic world where it's kind of valued in the sense of that it helps to be that way because it helps you be creative. He's like, one of the studies that they did is that, if you give artists, people that are ADD, that are very artistic, you give them the meds to help with that, their creative streak just dies. Just dive bombs. And I'm like, yeah, that ain't going to happen. Nope, keep them away. I mean, I get it if people need the help, whichever, that's fine. That's their thing. But losing that streak would just be devastating to myself personally. So like, well, in that case, I might as well just go work in a factory. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I did before, and it was great because I could come home and do whatever I want.
Those feel like kind of cheap diagnosis.
Yeah, that too. Like, I agree.
what it's like a chicken and egg thing a little bit.
Hmm.
You know, were you ADD always, if that was the case, if it's actually true, and you would be like that, just pick your poison,
Hmm.
or did you just get good at music because that was your obsession? And it's not that you're ADD; it's just you learn how to focus and actually like,
When something's interesting, that's it. But
yeah,
I brought that up, and he's like, they were like, what is this? He's like, that's also a symptom. And I'm like, how is that a symptom? You're
you're like
confusing. Like,
you're
I'm
just
not a
making
medical
this up
guy.
now, aren't you?
I
Yeah.
could totally be, yeah, I could totally be way out there, because I'm not, I'm married to a nurse, but it's like being married to a rocket scientist. It doesn't mean jack, you don't want me building a rocket or giving you medical advice.
Yeah.
But the underlying thing is just like, well, wait a minute. So I'm easily distracted, but I have no problem sitting there forgetting to eat, working on something for hours and hours. I mean, if I didn't have kids, I'd probably like, oh God.
Wither
It's
away.
like,
Yeah, right.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh yeah, I should eat and pay attention to those things that I love and take care of them. But that always got frustrating because it was like playing both ends of the spectrum
Yeah.
in terms of the diagnosis, easily distracted or hyper focused. Well, guess what? That's two conflicting ends that you're saying result in the same thing.
I mean, so now since we're in the
Oh, let's
diagnostic
have
world
fun.
right now, since we've dove in, I'm thinking, and I'm an engineer also, like, so I'm always like problem solving. But I'm thinking like, well, maybe because I do the same thing. It's like I can hyper focus on music or art really, um, endlessly.
Hmm.
But I'm also easily distracted, not during those times so much, but other times. And what I wonder, and since I'm diagnosing, um, maybe it's just the balance. Like, since you've gotten so good at focusing on something, your brain's just like, all right, we're going to give you everything you need to satisfy that itch. You've been training us forever. But come on, when we're done with that, I need a break. Like, I'm not going to be able to focus all the time. How about you
Hmm.
just let me recharge myself? I'm going to go a little haywire,
Hmm.
but it's cool. Like, you'll probably get some cool thoughts through all this too. I just need to like reset and do my thing.
Hmm.
While, and then next time you need to do that, I'll be ready to go. I'll be healthy, fresh, good to go. Nice
Yep.
balance. If you were always hyper focused, like that doesn't seem very healthy, I don't think.
Probably not.
Just
To
like
some point.
completely absent minded all the time would not be probably very beneficial.
No, nope. One of the interesting things that I'll note is that last night I had a lunesta, which I have like I always have trouble sleeping. It's just one of my biggest things. I go in and out, and I try to compensate with it, and as much as I healthily can to get to sleep. I don't drink rarely at all because if I use that to get to sleep, that's generally a bad sign. So generally, occasionally whatever, but if it's like, oh yeah, it's I need to start drinking now to fall asleep 8 hours later, that might be a sign of something else. Anyway, but I have a script for Lunesta and I took it, but I usually avoid taking it because the next day I'm extraordinarily irritable, like just angry, snipping at the littlest things. And so I kind of was like, yeah, I kind of need to function in a society and not be that angry hermit type of guy. But to counterpoint that, when I was practicing today, I had a level of alertness and focus that I haven't had in like years. It was remarkable to me. I was getting so much done, so happy with my playing, so focused on everything and just knocking it out. It's like, yeah,
Maybe
this
I
might
play
be
better when I'm angry.
yeah, that dude, that thought is totally sitting in my head. I'm like, the trade if I could keep my marriage together and still be this
So
irritable.
did you watch the Pat Metheny video? So if you haven't seen this, Pat
I haven't
Metheny
watched the
was
whole thing yet. I
interviewed
watched
by
some of it.
Rick Beato.
But I remember him mentioning, he's like, I can just sit there on triads for like hours, man. I'll
Right.
sit there and practice that for like 5 or 6 hours. And I'm
That
like,
that was not the part I was
yeah,
going for. I think it's later in the interview, so you probably didn't get there.
probably not.
Which is, if he has a gig that day, he doesn't eat till after the gig. He plays late at night.
Yeah.
He doesn't eat anything all day. He won't eat
Wow.
until after the gig. And he said, and you reminded me of it because he said he's like, I play better when I'm hungry. It's just the way it is. I play better when I'm hungry. He's like, there's some negative sides to it too. And what I'm wondering is like he probably gets like snippy, probably a
Yeah.
little irritated. Like everyone get away from me. I'm hungry. I'm
Hmm.
hangry or whatever.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, there's those things you like kind of learn about yourself.
Hmm.
I guess. But it made me think, yeah, maybe just being, maybe it's the angry part of it that helps him focus and play better, right?
Yeah. Maybe you
Anger's
don't
a
like
pretty.
me
You
when I'm
ever
angry.
I always do this when I get mad. If we're bickering or something, I like need to do something like so I'll start cleaning or whatever,
Hmm.
and I can clean like the whole house. My wife's like, oh, maybe we should make you mad more often.
Exactly. She's got keywords and phrases in a little book. It's like, this needs
Yeah,
cleaned. And
kitchen's
we'll
really
react.
looking a little messy today. Yeah, but it's like that. Yeah, you're just kind of like I'm gonna zone in, think about something else, and you're like, I don't know. I haven't really tried that with music, like being angry, and I'm certainly I've played when I've been angry before,
Oh, yeah, of course.
but I don't recall like having a strong opinion on whether it was good or bad.
Hmm. So today felt great. Like, I just know because maybe, well, all right, fine. I'll just say it. Maybe it's a post-COVID brain fog that I think I've been maybe fighting, like just for myself, because that was one of the things, that they say. It's like a lot of people complain about, like they have this brain fog after having it, and I'm like, well, I also, work, have a family, and two young
Yeah,
kids, so
in your
brain fog is
40s.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, yes, welcome to my life. That's just a default thing. But it really was remarkable the amount of clarity I had today, and I hope I can keep that up. I don't know how, what that was, but it was like, wow, there it is. I'm totally in the zone, man.
I heard Scott. I think it was Scott Henderson. Pretty sure, but he was talking about water. That people don't drink enough water, particularly in the morning. And
Hmm.
like, if you wake up in the morning and you don't drink a couple glasses of water just to sort of like get yourself set, you can be like foggy all day. So one of the biggest things he did on tour the last couple of years is just like have a big bottle of water or whatever. Like he gets up, and then the rest of the day goes like 10 times better, just in general, like as a rule, because he just feels more like alert and is not so foggy. It's because it's like the body needed some oil or whatever, just to grease the wheels.
Maybe.
So
Yeah.
you feel a little bit better. Like all the systems are working better. They have enough fluid. They're not, in any kind of weird state. I like, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Hmm.
I like in the
Whatever
morning when I
reason.
have coffee, I'm a big coffee fan,
Oh, yeah, so am I.
but I
Yep.
always try to drink like a glass or two of water before, because I'm always like,
I
I know
started.
I'm probably dehydrated. I don't like to drive
Yeah.
right into the coffee, I guess.
That's usually coffee and like my normal routine. Wake up with the kids. I don't eat till they're out of the house. Like
Yeah.
it's like get that all situated. Okay, they're at school. Come home, have a cup of coffee, grab whatever I'm gonna eat. Whether it's something, my go-to has been like yogurt and granola. Something I can kind of like throw in a bowl and then walk up and sit down and
Yeah.
start my metronome and just kind of like nosh as I'm going. Um,
Jealous.
yeah, yeah. Well, luckily I have teaching to help, feed me. Otherwise, it'd be like I'm jealous. Yeah, well, I'm hungry. So what?
Why do you think I'm
Yeah,
eating granola?
yeah, exactly. It's cheap. And it's actually not too bad. It's my wife is like, you're
No,
eating like
granola is
unflavored
good.
yogurt. Well, I use it with like the unflavored Greek yogurt, like non-vanilla. She's like, why? And I'm like, because I don't really care. It's just breakfast, and I don't want to have an elaborate breakfast because that kind of feels like I'm weighted down now. It's like something nice and light, and I'm good to go. And then I usually have a huge dinner, but it's like lunch will be like something small and just to keep me going so I don't get hangry and like scream at students or whatever, unwarranted. Emphasis on unwarranted. Sometimes it's warranted. And then just kind of like go through the rest of the day. So I think that might be an interesting thing to dive into with somebody that really knows what they're talking about, nutrition and how that helps with focus and so on. Maybe we could get some form of a dietitian
And
who's
any of
also
you
a musician.
dietitians, let us know.
Yeah, dietitian, musician, or
Did I tell
even
you?
amateur.
Probably the last 5 to 10 years. I can't quite recall. Um, I started. That's probably 5 years, like intermittent fasting. So I don't eat breakfast.
Okay.
and it's like the greatest thing I ever did ever. Because I always struggle with breakfast. Like if I eat anything like sugary or sweet at all, or even like oatmeal or it makes me feel crappy like the whole day. Like it's like a downhill thing for me. So what I found out at one point though, was I could do like protein shakes in the morning, and I felt good. Or if it was just like basically like no like sugary things, or and I say sugar, I mean like carbs, not like a carb heavy thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at some point I was especially when I was like lifting a lot. There was a program I was doing, and it like highly recommended it. And I was kind of worried about it, but then I did it, and I was like, it was like the greatest. You can have coffee, like I had black coffee, but I don't usually eat till 1 or so, 12:31, and it's awesome. Like you're just like hyper focused during that time, like just whatever your body's doing or something during that time. It's great. And then you tend to not eat like when it's 1 o'clock. I don't want like sugary anything. Like I'm not like, oh man, I wish I had a donut, or it's always like I want something of substance that's, kind of more healthy, on the healthier side. So it's kind of interesting how it changes you. Where I still will have like, if we get donuts or something one day, like I'll have donuts in the morning, but then it's like a downhill for the rest of the day. It's like we had donuts. Now, like 10, I had donuts in the morning, maybe 9:30, 10. I'm like, oh, I wish I had another donut, or I want some kind of sweet something. Or then by noon, I've already had like my daily consumption of calories, and I still want food, and I'm just hungry. Like it makes me feel gross, and I don't feel good about it either. Like you're like, oh, I want chips and I want pop or something. Yeah.
One of the annoying things about getting old is I had to get like my yearly checkup and everything. And my wife made me do it just because check the blood pressure, check everything like that, because it was a little bit high. And looking up online, like what is the diet if your blood pressure is not hypertension, but pre or whichever in that range. And I'm like, that is my complete diet. Like, and it wasn't like bad. It's like olive oil, garlic, the greens and, oatmeal, dairy products. I'm like, that's literally my diet. Like literally that's what I eat. I generally, my wife,
so that doesn't help. You have to do more now.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm ticked. It's like I've been taking care of myself. I work out 5 or 6 days a week. I eat generally healthy. Like I don't really like sweets, but that's because I gorged them when I was a young kid. It's just like enormous sweet tooth. And now it was kind of like,
they're not my favorite either, but it's kind of like if you open the gate, I can get sucked in,
Yep. It's like if the kids want to go to Dairy Queen, if I get something, I'm going to be craving more of it.
Yeah.
If I get that.
Sure.
But that's why I usually they're like, can we go to Dairy Queen? It's like, yeah, that's fine. I just don't get anything. It's like, whatever. Because I know what I'll do mentally, what I'll be craving after that. And that's annoying. It's just like, I just wanted to chill. But now I'm sitting here wanting another Blizzard or something. And how does that help with music? It helps because it makes me happy. Yeah. And apparently I think I play better happy, but I clearly play better angry, or at least I think I do, or at least irritated.
And now you can be like, I wanted some ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Deny that and get angry. Stub my toe.
Why do I always deny myself? I hate myself for not eating it, but I hate myself if I do eat it.
Just hate, period. Great. This is going to be an awesome practice session. So, and that does make me happy. That it makes me angry to stop practicing when it's going that well. It's just like, why are you wasting my time?
That's the worst, right? Yeah. That's what you start actually like getting something, and then it's like, I gotta go to work, or I gotta go. Like it's time to do this or time to do that.
Or the kids get into a fight, or if they need help with something. It's like, oh, that was going so well. Oh well. I mean,
I'll never remember how I did that.
Well, at least most of mine is already written out in front of that. We didn't even get to that topic. We got to save that for the next one. And just to clue everybody in, me and Tim have decided to do a mutual challenge this past couple of weeks. I don't want to say I assigned, but he asked for a suggestion of a classical piece to work on something with multiple voices.
Particularly Bach. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly Bach. That's what I was gonna. I was heading down
Oh, sorry.
direction. No, whatever. And then for myself, I was asking him like, all right, so what would you give like a junior level student a jazz standard to learn and approach? So I'm trying to tackle. Well, I am tackling Stella by Starlight, and it's interesting because let's save the complete discussion for another and start this at the beginning of the podcast rather than towards the end. But we definitely have differing approaches, and it's like getting into a jazz and improvisational frame of mind with it is very different for me because I'm looking at like
Right.
the chords and the melody, and I'm thinking, okay, let's grab a couple of arrangements and I'm very quickly getting drawn into that trap. But I'm going to
Yeah,
stop
so
talking.
I'm trying to stop him from like I'm trying to if I were teaching him, so to speak, what would I expect? In it, the arrangement stuff's all great, but I know that's what he's good at. So like, it doesn't help. It doesn't help them to be a jazz player at all, really, to play somebody's arrangement.
Yeah, or even kind of the work. In this sense, it's like even working up my own is not the point. It's more to be on the improvisational edge. So it's. I mean,
I
that
gave
was
him new
too.
language to use, which was new to him, I think, and so I'm hoping he's working on that too.
Yep. And we'll see what Tim's going after once he's done getting it all under his fingers. So then we can start talking about it a little bit more in depth.
Yeah.
So
And it's fun. It's been nice. It's like it's actually kind of nice in a way, because normally a lot of the stuff is I'm either working on songs for a show or like a record or something,
Mm-hmm.
or like a lot of the stuff I'm practicing is a little more abstract, or I'm creating my own music with it. But to have like an actual piece of music just to play
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of nice. I haven't had that in a while. And it's beautiful. The music's beautiful.
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of it's just because I use a weird tuning too. Like I was trying to maintain the tuning, so the fingerings and stuff often don't work that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now I've just been like sort of mapping it out, which of course I'm not writing any of it down. I'm just remembering. But I need to write it down because there's certain choices that I'm making and I'm like, I really like them. That actually, instead of what would probably be in first position with the standard tune, is actually getting me up the neck more, which I kind of like because there's just it lets you like milk the notes a little bit differently.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that, because that was the one thing in the back of my head. I'm like, this is going to be interesting with that altered tuning.
Yeah, and I could switch to standard, and I said to myself that if it just didn't work out, I would just do it in standard. It's not that I can't do standard. It's It's sort of part of the challenge too. I kind of like the idea of doing it in my tuning. And I think it yields a different result, right? Where you would use an open string for a E and a B, I'm using it open strings for Fs and Cs, on those two strings. So there are a couple of times where I'm using like the open C or whatever,
Yeah,
and that's kind of neat. It's like it ends up being kind of cool. But there's also times where it's like, oh man, like that particular phrase is probably really easy to do in standard tuning, but here I'm like doing this or something, just to make it work. So it's kind of, there's nothing that's impossible though. So it's been fun. I enjoy it. We'll talk more about it later, but I mostly have the first movement memorized. Like that's sort of like, if I have enough time, I can remember how to do it, but I'll get the parts of it where it's like, what was that again?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I don't have it like, it's not like seamlessly memorized, but it's like I basically remember it. And also a lot of it's like I remember what it sounds like, so like it's not foreign to me anymore.
Where I'm coming at it from, like, okay, I don't have that crutch of having the score in front of me. Like, obviously I'm using my ears at all times, but it's interesting. It's just a different vibe to have like nothing, and I'm just kind of like going on. I have discovered that, my I&M alternation in terms for improvising is great. It's like, this is fantastic. Why am I using a pick? I
would just stop using a pick if I were you.
I mean, I would be right there with you if I didn't wreck my nails on steel strings. Like if I didn't, if they wouldn't like tear up the ping pongs or kill my tone when I went to nylon, absolutely I would do that all the time. Like no brainer. Immediately it'd be like,
I
pick.
wonder if you ever tried those, like, I don't know what you call them, banjo picks or whatever.
They sound absolutely god awful on nylon string.
Oh, yeah, but
But,
I'm not talking about nylon. So
oh,
when you play steel,
I haven't tried them on a steel string, but I can't see them like working well because of the way that they go over the tip of the finger, and that would get my nail would get in the way.
hmm.
Like I get like I'd have to have it like out to here. Like for those of you that aren't listening, I'm showing or that aren't watching. I'm like holding my finger out from my fingernail. It's like it would come out so far from the fingernail
Yeah.
to protect it. And just to be blunt, I'd be like a little bit of a wuss. I don't want to damage that because I spend so much time on the other thing. Now that being said, when I was doing the acrylics, I wouldn't care it. Like when I was doing a full acrylic nail, it didn't matter. Like the acrylics would break a steel string before they would break. Those things were so durable, but the tone on them was, I'd say it was like 80%. Like it was good, but it wasn't. It was just lacking something, Especially, I remember I heard Jim Marin play when I was actually training for that gig that we both did.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, his tone is like 10 times better than mine. I'm going back to the ping pong balls. Forget this. Done. So that's what caused me to ditch that. So I don't know. It's like, I think if I played super quiet on a steel string, I'd be all right for a little bit, but still it would just, it would just wreck them. I know it does because whenever I try to teach on a steel string, it's like by the end of the day or whatever, even a half-hour lesson, I'm like, dang it, now I got to refile everything to get a better edge. It's part of that's what has me looking at those Godins, those
The nylon ones.
nylon ones. It's like I'm curious because that's like the perfect hybrid for electric and the strings that I like. Plus, it's a MIDI, so I could really just do whatever the hell I wanted with the thing.
Sure.
In terms of a controller, it's like, that would be tempting. So
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have those. They really like them. So
yeah, I like them too in theory, but I can't stand the sound of them. Like compared to a regular full-bodied classical, even like a Yamaha.
Well,
like that,
I guess if you compare it to an electric or something, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah, I
we
thought
should
about
put
those
brakes
too.
on that.
Kind of interesting.
Still might grab one because they're reasonably priced. They're not super expensive.
Right.
It's something where if I actually get to that level of spare
I bet
cash,
they're fun. I bet they play really nice too. Like,
oh yeah,
you're like, this
it's
is
like a
what a
dream.
nylon string could feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like low action
And on that note, I did get that zero.
Did you put it in? Oh, did you get the blank one?
I got the blank. It just came in the mail, so I'm gonna have to take it somewhere to get it sized up to give it a shot. So I'll probably do that within the next couple of weeks once I figure it out, like who I trust with it, because certain local places kind of went down. Yeah, exactly. It's like, and there's a guy that lives like an hour from me that does phenomenal work, but it all depends on how busy he is. Can I show up and have him do it in a day while I sit and watch him, or is it going to be something where I have to leave it for a week? So all those types of things, questions, and get that done. But I think this is as good a stop as anywhere else.
I was just to say that one.
Oh yeah.
So I'm working it up now, and like I said, I'm getting under my fingers. But I do, at some point, I probably would like to record it, and I'll put nails on then. Instead have to work it up, do the ping pong ball thing.
You can do the ping pong.
It's been a while since I've done that, but I still remember how to do it, I think.
Yeah. Just get ready for pain, because that's the way that it is.
Yeah.
Though I will say that I did end up doing a lot like Jim Marin, where the ping pong ball is supporting the natural nail rather than just ping pong contact. And that is more of a result of shaving it down than intention for originally placing them on. Because I like that ramp going up the I and the M finger, and to get that angle, the natural nail comes out really quick, but it's a huge improvement for the tone. It's like, oh, okay, sweet, and it's supportive and it keeps the right shape. Because the only thing that stops me from using natural nails is I have tremendously bad hooks in all of them. It's just like, in each one. Yeah. So it's like, this isn't going to work. Plus, I like having the security of replaceable things.
Yeah,
kind of. It's like, okay, I broke a nail, I can just fix it. The Rico nails are really good. Those are really good if you want to use something, and they just glue onto the top with like a tape adhesive, and they sound great. The Poperad used them when I was subbing for him at a Man of La Mancha. And so we were talking about that, and they held up really, really well. Like they'll definitely hold for a couple hours, And then so that him using them it had me tell all my students that wanted to grow their fingernails, but one didn't have time nor that much. Like they wanted to, but they're like, that's a big commitment. I'm like, just spend $20 and get these things and put them on, and I'll help you shape them, and you can just put them on when you want to play, and that'll give you this. And then you can make that decision off of that, and they're removable.
Good idea. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And they stay on for a few hours and then they pop off.
Yeah, dude, you can rip them off if you wanted to. Like, it's not going to hurt. It's literally like it's almost like a Post-it note style of glue where it'll stick, but then you can kind of rip it off if you apply enough force. But it's a good enough connection where you can actually play and get results. It's not going to cause this thing to fly off. I know a guy, Lukas. I don't remember his last name. The Polish classical guy, absolutely phenomenal. But he uses Kiss nails, that brand, the glue-on ones.
Yeah.
And he just replaces them every week. And his tone was massive. So it's like, okay, I'm in the camp of, does it get the results that you want? Okay, then who cares? Sure. As long as it's legal, you're good to go. So you don't want to do like, yeah, this is elephant tusk. It's like, yeah, let's find another option there for the for the nail ends on that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know about those at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed like, I was using the pads of my fingers, doesn't quite get those sounds that you
Oh, you sound like Targa then, because he was a no guy. Targa, no nail. Yep, that was still the thing where that was still kind of like.
It doesn't sound that bad, but you get that little like shh sound.
Yeah, you got a different. There's that there. Getting like true, real gnarly Ponticello is tough with that, just because of the nature of the skin. But I also found that like when a friend of mine did a period album, I did the engineering work on it, where he played without nails on gut strings on a period guitar.
Yeah.
Like he had one built that was smaller. First of all, the thing was a Canon, but it was a Thames, so that kind of has it going for it. And the second thing is that it sounded more like a piano than a guitar. Just because of the nature of like the contact. And he would take olive oil and dip his fingers in it before he would play, because that's what they would do. So they'd like they'd like have a little bottle and like do that, and then they'd play. So it's interesting. Might be something to try. See what that does on the nylon strings. I know for sure on gut
the strings just pop off. Then
no, we don't like that. You use that only on cat gut strings.
Work.
Which I still can't believe you can get. You can get legit gut strings if you want them. So. Not cheap, but you can get them. I think it's like $70.
Do that. Get some tortoiseshell picks. You'll be great.
And at literal ivory keys, you're good to go. You just call it the Endangered Species Band. So,
I guess I saw Julian Lage talk about the tortoiseshell picks, and apparently you can get them, but they like melt down. They don't get them from the tortoises. They melt down like old jewelry.
Yeah,
and they make them, but they're pricey. And that's coming from, he said they were pricey, and he uses blue chip picks, which are like $40 a pop.
Really? Wow.
So if blue chip's not pricey, I can't imagine what those cost.
The hell isn't a blue chip pick for $40? Magic. Is it the tortoise?
You want to sound like Julian or what? Come on.
I'm going to need that. I'm going to need a Colin, 2 Collins, because I got to have an acoustic one as well. And then whatever amp that he's using on, and then that what's it? He's got that universal audio like
the aux box thing.
Yeah, yep. So,
but he only used that, I think, like online or whatever. But yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah,
either way.
So it's All right. So check out the new album. I'll put a link on this.
Here again?
Here again?
Yeah.
Wasn't my idea for the title, but it's cool. Whatever. I was not being picky at that point. I just wanted to get the artwork done.
Yep.
Yeah.
The live stream on Facebook from your gig, and then your.
Oh yeah, that's happening. Oh, and then I have some a promo video I'm gonna hopefully put out tomorrow too for that record, and it has Paul and I in particular answering some questions. So
cool.
Hopefully it'll come out kind of cool. And talk a little bit about the gear and just the experience and what night terrors is and blah blah blah. So
Very nice.
we'll see. Just add it to the list.
Yeah, hey, it's better than nothing out there.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, y'all.
Catch
We'll
y'all
see you
later.
later.